Hey friends, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be discussing investments. So, you've been working a job and you've got some pocket money lying around, but you're a bit unsure of what to do with it. You've heard people saying, oh, you should invest your money, you should put your money into this, you should spend your money, but you're a bit unsure of what to do, and this can sometimes be quite overwhelming. You may have heard of companies like Tesla, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and if you bought the shares 10 years ago, you would have been a multi-millionaire by now. But in the light of this, there's so many investments which you need to take into consideration, like index funds, stocks and shares. You've got ISAs, you've got cryptocurrency, you've got an array of investments that you need to take into consideration, which is all personally specified to you. And this video will hopefully give you an insight in terms of which side you want to go into. So the first thing that we're going to discuss is what happens to your money if you just leave it alone. So let's say you've got a mattress and you just keep putting your money underneath. So as you may or may not know, inflation is around about 2 to 2.5% each year. However, if you put your money in a bank, the interest rate that you probably get is around about 1%. This means in January, if you have £1,000, January the year after, that £1,000 won't be worth £1,000 anymore. It'll be worth something like £990, for example. The reason why this is because the interest rate which the bank gives you compared to the inflation rate is much lower, which means that as your money is left in a bank for longer and longer, the real value of that money actually depreciates over time. And this is where investing comes in. The purpose of investing is to make sure that the return on your money which you receive is greater than the inflation rate, which means that you're making money on your own money. Therefore, this begs the question, how do we prevent our money from losing value over time? So hypothetically speaking, let's say we open a savings account and you deposit £1,000 in there. The current interest rate in that savings account, let's say, is 10%. So at the end of 1 year, that £1,000 will be worth £1,100 by the end of year 1. By the end of year 2, that'll be worth £1,210. This is called compound interest. So year on year, as you keep on putting your money in, the amount which is accumulated over that full year, the next year, the interest will be added on top of that. But if inflation is at 2%, this means that our money is still increasing in real terms, because we're still making 8% more. That's if the inflation rate is around about 2 to 2.5%. This is only for example purposes, but in real life, banks will never ever give you 10% because it's unfeasible for them and they won't be able to afford that, and it's not sustainable in any way, shape or form. So, what is investing? Basically, in a nutshell, investing is where you want to make more money on top of the money that you already have. So let's take a more realistic figure. Before we said £1,000 at 10% interest. Now let's take £1,000 at 1% interest. Currently, banks are giving between 0.5% and 1.5% interest in their savings account. So at the end of year 1, the total accumulated amount within your savings account would be £1,010. Let's say you want to buy a MacBook that costs £1,000, for example, at the start of year 1. In a few years' time, that MacBook may go up to £1,100 or £1,200, but the money which you already have is still only worth £1,000. This shows us that as inflation increases, goods get more and more expensive, and as a result, the amount of products or services which you can buy with your existing £1,000 decreases, which means the purchasing power of your original income decreases. And this is where investing comes into play to combat inflation. Therefore, the basics of investing is to buy something now in the hope that in 10 or 15 years' time, it'll be worth more than what you initially invested in. Let's take another example. Let's take a house. So there's two different ways in which you can make money from a house. There's rental income, or there's the property appreciates in value. Let's take the appreciating in value as the first example. Let's say you buy a house, you renovate it, you make sure it looks nice, it's all fresh and clean. And let's say you bought that house for £100,000. Let's say it's taken you 5 weeks to renovate the house and put it back onto the market again. And an estate agent comes over and says that house is worth £150,000. So in 6 weeks, you've made £50,000 gross profit, but your net profit would have to minus the costs. And let's say your costs will be like £20,000. So that means in a matter of 6 weeks, you've made £30,000 on flipping a house or renovating and then selling a house on. However, renting is slightly different. Rent is the income which you receive monthly from your tenants. And rental income is a long game in the sense of you may have taken a mortgage out on the house and your mortgage payments are less than the rental payments which your tenants make, which means that each month you're making a surplus. This is kind of similar to what investing is, and it is a form of investment in itself. The reason why this is a type of investment is because you're not putting that money into a bank, you're putting that money into a property, and at the end of the cycle, let's say 5 weeks of renovating and getting the property back onto market again, you've managed to make a return on the initial investment which you invested. Let's say you invested £100,000. At the end of that 5-week period or 6-week period, you've ended up with £150,000, and of that £30,000 have been profit. That is the exact same as what investments are, and it is a form of investment in itself. However, this rental income isn't the exact same as the other asset classes which I'll be talking about. So you may ask, what are the different types of asset classes? You may have heard of a few of them, like stocks, shares, crypto, NFTs, index funds, bonds, government bonds. There's a variety of different asset classes which you can put your money into. However, this can sometimes also be quite overwhelming. Therefore, I'm going to simplify it down to the two that I'm most interested in: stocks and shares and index funds. The reason why this is because stocks and shares and index funds are accessible for most people and most students. And if you're the average person, you won't need a large amount of money to start investing. You just need small increments each month, and slowly it'll start to compound over time. So firstly, let's take stocks and shares. Investing in stocks and shares means that you take a small little chunk out of a company. Let's say the pie is the company. By you buying a stock or a share, it means that you take a tiny little slice of the pie. And the bigger the slice of the pie you take, the more stocks and shares you hold, which means the more of a percentage of the company you have. However, investing in a company, for example, like Apple, isn't as simple as just buying stock and a share. And this is where a broker comes involved. This is like the middleman, and you go through him to buy stocks and shares of a specific company. That'll be Amazon, Tesla, Apple, Google, it could be anything. And the broker or the brokerage firm allows you to access those stocks and shares of the company. But you got to remember that these companies are going to be publicly traded, which means that it has PLC at the end of the name. Reason being is because these stocks and shares are accessible to the public, and once you've bought them from the broker, that means you own a tiny piece of Apple or a tiny piece of Google or a tiny piece of Microsoft. And that's how you would get started with investing, is by finding a brokerage firm, companies they have on their website which you can invest in, and then just buy a small piece of each firm. So how do we make money from these stocks and shares? So there's two ways in which we can make money from stocks and shares. Firstly, there's dividends, and secondly, there's increase in share price. Dividends is similar to the rental income which I discussed earlier. For example, let's take Apple again. Let's say you've invested £100 into Apple, and that gives you X amount of shares in Apple. What will happen every quarterly, the company will pay out dividends, and these dividends will be a share of the profits or a chunk of the profits which Apple may have made within that period of time. And depending on how many shares that you've got in Apple, the more money you'll get. So let's say you got £100 to compare to £1,000 of shares in Apple. Apple may be offering 20% of its total profits to shareholders, and that money will be allocated to them. However, the more of a share you own, or the more of a company you own, the more profits you'll receive. The other way is the share price increasing. So let's say you bought shares in Apple 10 years ago, and you were to sell them in 2023. At the end of 2023 or in January 2023, you would have made a certain amount of income from that. And this is an amazing concept to actually take a grasp of. Reason being is because if you start investing in loads of different companies which you're interested in, you'll start receiving those small rental incomes from each one, and those rental incomes can form a bigger piece, and your investments will slowly start to pay off. And the beauty about this is that you're beating inflation. The return on your investment is actually increasing, which means that inflation is still going up, but the return on your investment is still going even higher, which means that you're making a profit each month or each year, for example. But it's very important to actually understand the market or understand the companies which you're investing in. And from my advice, this isn't financial advice in any way, shape or form, but listen to Warren Buffett. It's very important to actually not pick your stocks. And if you're new to investing, as the wise words of Warren Buffett said,
I had a choice today for a 10-year purchase of a 10-year bond at whatever it is, or 10 years, or buying the S&P 500 and holding it for 10 years. I'd buy the S&P in a second.
It's better if you put your money into an index fund. So what is an index fund? An index fund is an investment portfolio which tracks a specific market. Let's take the S&P 500, for example. The S&P 500 is the top 500 companies in the US, and within the S&P 500, each of those 500 companies will offer a share of their company which is available. So if we take a look, we can see that the top 3 companies is Google, Apple, and Amazon. So within this investment portfolio, your money will be split as the weighting showed. Within Apple, 6% of the amount you invest would go into Apple, 5% of the money you invest would go into Google, and 2% of the money you invest would go into Amazon, for example. You have 497 other companies going all the way down, which they all offer different weighting. Loads of different companies in there, the top 500 companies in the US. The reason why this investment is so useful and it's an amazing good investment to actually get started with is because your risk is diversified over a large portfolio of investments, which means that you're not putting all your money just into one stock or share. You're putting it into a diversified range. So the 500 companies that I was talking about. So the goal of the index fund is to match performance of the actual index itself. And this is why I said picking your actual stocks at the beginning isn't a useful idea, because you have platforms like Vanguard, which actually offer you the S&P 500, where you can invest and get started with investing just with small amounts. And over time, it's going to start to compound. So in my opinion, to get started with investing, I think an index fund like the S&P 500 would be an amazing starting point for you to try and see how it goes. Just remember, this isn't financial advice, this is from my own experience and I'm just sharing that. And this will be very, very valuable if you're a student and you've got a bit of money lying around and you're not needing it. And it's just a good way to actually get started with small amounts each month, which will slowly compound over time. And eventually 10 to 15 years time will be worth tens of thousands of pounds, for example. So some people may actually know about investing from what to do, but a lot of people actually fear it. Well, why is this the case, and is there anything to actually fear? The main fear which I hear is the fear of losing money. People be like, oh, what if I put all my money into this and in a year's time it all goes or it all disappears or the company goes insolvent? The only thing which you got to remember is that the only time you will lose is if you sell. That's why investments are seen to be a long-term thing, and you're not really supposed to look at it. You're supposed to put a chunk of money in there or dollar cost average into the actual investment fund and just watch it grow over time. And another thing is that people say, shall I invest into crypto? Crypto is a very, very volatile market, and it is still quite a new thing as well. The one thing which you got to remember is that you only invest the money into crypto that you're willing to lose. Don't invest money that you actually need on a day-to-day basis, because that's too much of a risk that you can take. And because of the volatility of this market, it's very hard to actually get started with it. But unless you do tons of research and you actually understand the market very, very well, which people do for a living, by the way, all I would say is to stick with those index funds and get used to that and slowly build your knowledge up on trading, build your knowledge up on investing, and just broaden your horizon just in general. So all the previous points that I've been talking about, that's a very good way of actually investing your money. And in some ways that could be like a slow form of investment because it's happening over time, over like 5, 10, 15 years, for example. But what if I was to tell you that there's a faster way of investing, there's a faster way of seeing those returns, there's a faster way of your income increasing, there's a faster way of your potential income to increase. This is where it comes to investing in yourself. Using that money which you've collected, using that pocket money which you've had where you've had a part-time job, you've gained a couple £1,000, for example, and you've just got it there lying there, sitting there doing absolutely nothing. That's the perfect time for you to get that money and start investing it in yourself. This could be through courses, completing a diploma, setting up a business, increasing your skill set, for example, SQL skills. If you have those SQL skills, that's going to make you very, very employable later on down the line. Coding languages, understanding softwares, understanding Excel. There's so many things which you can do, especially course-wise, which will make you more employable and give you a higher skill set in comparison to other people. And with this higher skill set, eventually your salary would increase, or your wage would actually increase over time. And your wage increase over time would be way greater compared to any investments that you could make within that year, unless something popped off or something increased dramatically in price and you sold it, for example. But the chances of that happening is very, very slim, and you can't rely on that. One thing you can always rely on is investing in yourself and in increasing your own human capital. Because if your human capital is greater, it means that potential employers are going to find you more attractive, generally attract higher wages later down the line. Another thing could be to start up a business. So this may be a Shopify business, this may be an Amazon FBA, maybe an online coaching business, which I personally set up in my free time. This could be like a service, like translation service, tuition business. It could be anything where you have a competitive advantage. It's the perfect thing to actually take advantage of. Reason being is because other people will be looking for those skills, and if you're very good at your job, if you're very good at a specific skill, you can make money on that and you can capitalize on that opportunity. And over the course of a year, if you really dedicate yourself to developing that skill or honing down, the investment that you originally made would pay off in no time. And you've then got business which you can say that I've got this business and it's making me X amount of income each month or each year. And year on year, the more you work, the more it'll grow, the more it'll expand. And eventually you're going to have a very successful business which you can utilize. Another thing which I'm doing right now is the YouTube channel. So I'm trying to provide value, give my experience and my knowledge to students and people across the world in order for them to understand or give them some sort of inspiration, but just generally just providing value to them. And hopefully in 1, 2, 3 years time, I'm dedicating this time, so I'm investing my time, not money. So investing doesn't always have to be money, remember. It can be your time, it can be your effort. So I'm investing this time into creating videos, creating content in the hope that later on I can transform this into some sort of a business or transform it into some sort of a income which can generate, which can provide value, which can do so many things, because YouTube and automation and online content creation is going to be a huge thing in the next 5 to 10 years. So there's two main things that we discussed today. There's investing in an index fund or stocks and shares, or there's the other side of investing in yourself. And the main thing that I wanted you to take away from this video is that investing isn't just one specific thing. It could be investing your money, it could be investing your time, it could be investing your effort, it could be investing anything which is due to you, which will make you into better, a stronger or a more disciplined person in the future. And hopefully from this video, you've understood that there's an array of investments which you can possibly make. And it's a matter of taking hold of these opportunities that come your way and understanding yourself in terms of what skills can you bring to the table where you can capitalize on, where you can make money from, and you actually enjoy the thing that you're doing as well. Well, as a long-term thing, index fund is an amazing investment portfolio to be a part of, as it will most likely increase in value over time, which means that your money would increase in value over time. So guys, that's a wrap. I hope you guys found this video very, very useful. And I would appreciate if you like and subscribe. And don't forget to comment down below if you have any questions or any queries, or if you don't understand anything. I'm more than happy to help. And once again, thank you, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.